don't think I've expressed this in the past before, but I am a fan of the Higurashi no Naku Koro anime series, or sometimes it's translated to When They Cry, or more specifically, When the Cicadas Cry. Even though I kind of turn an eye on some darker anime out there, I still check at least some of them out, like Elfen Lied and Higurashi, for example, and it has a special place, and I had some fond memories over that series. But I'll sum up what my thoughts on the anime in short. I actually do like the characters. I love the Groundhog Day time loop scenario, which is starting to become a regular in a lot of anime and even some games such as Zero Escape and Corpse Party. Definitely love the soundtrack, and I just think it's really fun despite how dark it can get in some of the latter half of the arcs. So now that after watching the anime nearly 5-6 years ago, a friend of mine recommended the manga adaptation. He says, it's a lot better in some areas. So I was like, oh, what the hell? I'll check out the manga. However, I only plan to review the first arc of the series, which is only 2 volumes long. But I might review some of the later arcs when I get around to them, if anyone's still interested. So with that said, let's get started with the review. Cry is a manga adaptation of the murder mystery sound novel series developed by 7th Expansion that was adapted and translated by Yen Press. The first arc, Onikakushi-hen, or as Yen Press translated to as Abducted by Demons, is a 2-volume introductory arc to the series, and while there is a brief introduction to most of the main cast, the arc centers around 3 of the characters: Keiichi Maribara, Rena Ryugu, and Mian Sonozaki. Keiichi moved to Hinamizawa, a small rural village that seemed pretty peaceful at first glance. He made some friends at school, like Rena, Mian, Rika, and Satoko, and after school he participates in a club they formed where they play various games and such. So things seem pretty swell in Hinamizawa, but after Keiichi discovers a dark secret about a grisly murder that occurred in the town, he starts to get a little nervous. So when he asked his friends, Rena and Mian, about it, they shrugged it off in the most bizarre manner to Keiichi. Oh well, whatever. That's in the past. However, after the Cotton Drifting Festival, another bizarre murder occurred, where a photographer was found with his throat forcefully torn open, and another citizen mysteriously disappeared. Now, because of this, Keiichi becomes rather suspicious of his own friends, thinking that he might eventually be the next target, just like another guy before him by the name of Satoshi. See, it is also believed that the reason why these bizarre incidents occur in Hinamizawa has some connection to their shrine god Urashiro, who curses people whenever they frickin' enter or leave the village in the first place. So that being said, it's a mystery, horror, psychological, supernatural manga, and a pretty entertaining one at that. In fact, I enjoyed how this arc was adapted in comparison to the anime. It did show more in terms of characterization as well as graphic content when compared to the anime, if you're into that thing. Also, I thought it did a better job handling Keiichi's internal conflict of dealing with his friends, even if he still considers them as such, or whether or not he should trust them because they're his friends, or he thinks they're gonna freaking murder him, as well as some of the bizarre incidents that occur every time he sees Rena and Mian. Oh yeah, something else that the anime didn't do, it's pretty minor, but I want to mention this. They actually show Keiichi's dad in the manga, and he actually has a pretty neat, cool looking appearance. You know, he's a painter, and he's got this really cool goatee, and he kind of has an eccentric personality. It was pretty entertaining for the few amount of pages that he was in the manga. The major characters of this arc, or at least the 3 major characters, I'm not going to discuss much about Rika or Satoko because they really didn't do much in this arc anyways. But the entire manga is told in a first-person perspective of the protagonist Keiichi Maribara. And character-wise, he's a pretty normal dude. Not much about him is developed other than his father was a painter, and because of his job, he moved to Hinamizawa, and I think it was there like at the start of the manga, it was like 3 weeks in There wasn't a whole lot that was revealed about Keiichi before he moved to Hinamizawa. In fact, in terms of character development, Rena and Mion just got a little more than he does. But he does have an arc in the story, and it's a pretty depressing arc where it goes to a downward spiral. You know, he starts off as a happy-go-lucky kid, but then it just gets worse at the very end. And I really can't say much without spoiling the entire manga, so it's something you just gotta witness yourself. Rena Ryugu, she's really friendly, loves all things cute. She likes to collect it or take it home, as she would often say. She hangs out at a trash heap and even collects stuff from there. She wanted to pick herself up a statue of Colonel Sanders. In the manga, she refers to herself in third person, and she says adorable. It's like adorable, but replace the R with the W. That's how they translate it, whatever. She also has a bit of a dark side, which was revealed by the police detective Oishi, but I'm not going to give it away for spoiler's sake. And she carries around a giant cleaver from time to time. That cleaver is pretty much almost her signature weapon. I mean, if you look up images of her, you will see her carry around that thing all the time. And finally, there was Mion Sonozaki, green-haired girl, ringleader of their class, as Keiichi mentioned. She's got more of a upbeat, but still a little bit of a hot-headed attitude. And she does act more playful and teases Keiichi a lot. In comparison to Rena in this arc, she really wasn't that much interesting. You find out a lot more about Rena and the stuff that she did in the past, and she definitely had a lot more scary moments. Mion had a few herself, but they were nowhere near as interesting as Rena's, so yeah, Mion was definitely overshadowed by Rena. Now, the artwork of the manga was done by Karen Suzaragi. The designs definitely matched the style balance with the progressing tone of the series from a rather fun, lighthearted feel to a completely dark tragedy. There are some creepy images during the scenes where Men and Rion start acting out of character and interrogating Keiichi, and there was definitely a lot more disturbing imagery for sure. Hell, not gonna lie, my heart did skip a beat from one particular page spread. And since the manga gets away with more content, in comparison to the anime, the manga does depict more graphic images and shows some of the grisly scenes like Tomataki's fate and several other things I do not wish to spoil the viewers with, but it's pretty damn bloody and a little bit gory. There is one bizarre criticism I have with how Oishi is drawn. Like, he looks okay and all, but some of the earlier pages, he seems to be too happy to be talking about murders to Keiichi. So overall, I'm going to keep reading the Higurashi When They Cry manga series. Maybe it's something about manga and its limitations compared to the anime, but I do find this to be a little more enjoyable than compared to the anime. Even though it's a pretty fast-paced arc and some of the characters did not develop much here, it was very entertaining to read with a good amount of mystery behind what the hell happened here. And that being said, I do give it a recommendation if you like stuff that starts out pretty fun and lighthearted then goes dark in nature pretty soon, or if you just like dark horror mystery stuff in general. I do have one other Higurashi manga lined up for review, and as well as another completely unrelated series to review next, but that won't come until much later in the future. But the next video I have planned is definitely my next rant, which is going to be on, fan bases at war with themselves. So I hope you stay tuned for that. And with that, Darkscream217 signing out.